Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors. We are wrapping up our Healthcare Decisions Month with Prices May Vary, Funeral Options. I have Dianna Repp here with me. She is with the Funeral Consumers Alliance of Arizona. Dianna, the Funeral Consumers Alliance is such a great organization for people to get to know, particularly when you're talking about, what do I need to do, right? Like what happens? And so you are a wonderful resource. I know you're going to share all about that today. So welcome. How are you?
I'm good. How's everybody here?
Good. Alive.
Alive. Above ground is good.
So you have an online audience along with, as everyone can tell from home, with an in-person audience. If you've got any questions for Dianna, please put those into the chat and we will address those afterwards. I'm going to turn it over to you, Dianna.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Dianna Repp, and I am part of the Funeral Consumers Alliance National. I serve as an advisor to the board, and I am a past president of Funeral Consumers Alliance of Arizona. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for those who are online. I appreciate this and the time to share with you. So before we go any further, can you hear me in the back?
Yeah.
Okay, use that teacher voice. I need to project slightly, maybe. Yes. Okay, good. So today what we're doing is a bit of a different program than what we've done in the past. So this one is Prices May Vary, How to Shop for Dignified, Affordable Burial or Cremation Services. And I'd like to say that that's going to cover a gamut of things, this idea of burial or cremation, because part of what I want to talk about are options that you have. And prices vary on those options. And that's part of what I like to think of as cost containment. So what the Funeral Consumers Alliance does, especially nationally, since I'm involved nationally, as well as your local, is that we are an educational foundation. So our group, our organization is here to support you and to help you get a deeper education and a broader education for the ways that you can help take care of your loved one after their passing. So whether that is burial or cremation or a whole lot of other options that you may or may not know about. So again, thank you so much for coming. And what I'm going to do now is figure out how to go forward. Yes. Different computers. So of course, we're going to start with a bit of a disclaimer. And there's two parts here. But the first part is the legal part. Again, FCA of Arizona and nationally is an educational group. And so our organization supports and provides educational materials both on our website and in presentations like this. So if you have any deeper legal questions, since we are not a legal entity as far as presenting legal advice, please do contact a lawyer or someone else who is familiar with the legal aspects here. The second thing, my own personal, I would call this sort of a disclaimer, but I'll say this. Again, thank you for coming, but also, this is a tough topic, but you're already here. I'm not here to scare you, thank goodness. And you're not here to be scared because you're already here. You've already done what I think of as one of the hardest parts. And that is that you've started to think about end of life, either your own or someone else's. And you've thought about looking at your options, looking at how costs may vary, prices may vary. And so you've already started that. And so what I am hoping that we do today is support those decisions that you make. We'll start off by looking at your rights and your options. Some of the things we're going to talk about are covered much more deeply in the presentations that we have given the last 2 years. So if you're interested in any of those, you can contact FCA of Arizona. You do have the materials here, the slide set, and information is at the back of that. And for those of you online, hello again, this will be sent to you, is my understanding. And I'm getting a yes nod for that. So you'll see those materials as well. So there's a lot here to cover. So I'm going to lightly touch on some of the materials that we normally cover, but I think they're important as well. So the first one is the Federal Trade Commission funeral rule. It's usually just called the funeral rule. The FTC reviews this every 10 years. The last time was a couple of years ago. And Funeral Consumers Alliance nationally was part of that conversation. I am excited and grateful and honored to say that they were. I remember watching it online. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the things that possibly may be changing in the funeral rule. But these are the basics. There are 10 basics. Buy only the funeral arrangements that you want. Get price information on the telephone. You don't have to go there to wherever this funeral home is. You can call them up, and they are required by law to give you price information. You can get a written itemized price list when you visit a funeral home. I'm saying you can get, they are legally required to hand you one. You can see a written casket price before you see the actual caskets. And the same thing, a written outer burial container price list before you discuss that. Sometimes those two are placed together in the handout that you would be given. This next one is really important. Receive a written statement after you decide what you want and before you pay. In FCA, we have a little saying, that shop before you drop. So yes, thank you for laughing, I'm trying. So the idea is to decide what you want, talk to them about it, and before you sign on the dotted line, they need to give you a written statement for that. I think that's really important so that when you're there, what you're going to see is what you're actually getting. That explanation in the written statement should include any legal cemetery or crematory requirements. This one is really important. Sometimes, and here I'm speaking nationally, sometimes you go into a funeral home and they have a cremation for a particular price. And it sounds really good, but they're not telling you is that doesn't actually include the price of the cremation. And why not? Which, yes, that's my response also is, oh, and that's because that's a third party. That there's sometimes cremations are not handled by the funeral home themselves. And so they're sending the body somewhere else for it to be done. And so those people would bill you separately for that. And part of the thinking that has been presented, that I have heard, is they can't control those prices because it is a third party. And so they're not giving you those prices because they don't control them. So make sure, again, when you get your written statements, that it includes what that cost is going to be so that you can figure for that. Again, prices may vary, so do count on that. The next one of my own personal favorites, use an alternative container instead of a casket for cremation. And you can see a couple of those here. And let's see, does this work? Well, I am trying to circle it online, but folks, you can see a couple of those there. These are from some research that I did quite a while back. And so these rigid cardboard containers are things that you can use in lieu of any other type of container that you might want. If it was a wooden container, especially if you're going to do cremation, what you want is something that is combustible. And of course, wood would do that. But instead of paying for and burning up all that wood, you can use a cardboard container instead. Again, rigid cardboard, specifically made for this purpose. And it depends on how much, there are, of course, charges at funeral homes as well. There should be, they're a business. So, what the base price is, and then the price that you might pay, but somewhere $100 or more is what I have seen. So a whole lot less. Another thing that you can do with this, if you are going to cremate, and I can remember, and I've talked about this before when I was here, my adult son, our adult son died many years ago, and we're going to have him cremated, but we did rent a wooden casket. It was really nice. I think it was walnut. It was really nice, but they put this cardboard container inside of it because it was just the rental. I didn't think you can rent wedding dresses nowadays. So, and that one somebody else may use again, but we'll let that one slide. Anyway, so they had this cardboard container inside, and then there was fabric, and you would never have known it was there if you didn't know it was there. I peeked because I study funerary things, so yes, I looked. What can I say? But there it was. And so afterwards, they were able to just take that, and that's what they took to the crematory for the retort. The last two things, 9 and 10, provide the funeral home with a casket or an urn you buy elsewhere. How many people know that you can buy these at Costco? You can buy a casket at Costco. You can buy them online in a lot of different places. And then the last one, make funeral arrangements without embalming. I've spent quite a bit of time on these 10 because these are your legal rights. This is across the 50 United States, and I have found whenever I do something online, you never know where people will access something from. So these are your federal rights for what happens when you go to a funeral home and talk to funeral directors. And the reason I'm mentioning this about without embalming is it is not a legal requirement generally to be embalmed in the United States. And if they tell you that it's a legal requirement, please ask them to provide information on that. There are times when embalming may be necessary, and it may be that a funeral home will say, as I have had someone say to me, well, we do not show a body without that. And so that's their own personal information, but federally it is not required, generally speaking. So now we're going to talk about your options, and welcome to the death care revolution. I love that image. I got to go to the Death Care Super Conference in Seattle last year. I know you all wanted to go, but it was only me. What can I say? And so this was a sign at a place called Recompose that I'll talk about a little bit later. And I don't say that you need to go to some place like that. I'm just telling you, I didn't make up this sign myself. If I had, I would have loved it. But look at the options that we have: direct cremation, direct burial, a simple or an elaborate funeral. Lots of different ways you can do things. Conservation or green burial. Got some information on Arizona for you for a little bit later. Organ tissue, whole body donation. Again, these are the kinds of things that you can consider. Again, in our presentations that we have given in the past, we talk about this a lot more. So if you're interested, please talk to me afterwards and I can give you some more information. Whew. So now what? Whew. Knowledge is power. KIP, knowledge is power. It's one of my favorite sayings. I learned that in high school, KIP. When you go into a funeral home, you are in an asymmetrical relationship with them informationally. Three most, not going to say important because there are a lot of important things, three most financially important decisions that you make in your life: buying a house, buying a car, and paying for a funeral. So this is right up there. And when you go into any of these places, think about that asymmetry of knowledge. They know their business. It's their job. You need to come in as a consumer as knowledgeable as possible to help make informed decisions. So what we're going to look at is making a plan, controlling the cost, prices and options, and how they vary. I added in the options one myself because this is very important to me. What are the many different ways that people can care for their loved ones? And then one more step. And that's not the step into the great beyond. Okay, that's on this side. Looking at what's the last step that you need. So step one, learn what's involved. And again, you have the handout, and the folks at home, you will be getting this. These products and services are the things that we at the Funeral Consumers Alliance look at when we do our price comparison, and I'll show you some of that a little bit later. So this is a great piece for you to have. So whenever you're going to go to the funeral home, or talk to a funeral director, or look online, look at the different services that they provide so that you can do an apples and apples type of comparison. And also just think, I mean, for most of us, this is the kind of thing that happens even if we are expecting someone to pass. And I'm not saying dying here because I do my own work looking cross-culturally, and people have a lot of different ways of explaining end of life. In some cultures, they say they walk on. In some cultures, they're talking about passing, and you hear that a lot in the United States. People talk about passing. So again, lots of different ways to say that. But whenever you're talking about this, what are some of the basic things that you would want to consider? Because you might not have a checklist with you at that moment. So this is the basics for you, from removing the deceased from the place of death to delivering the casketed remains. So step 2, plan in advance, don't pay in advance. Again, we covered this in another presentation, but I do think this is so important when we're talking about containing the cost. When you look at funeral homes today and other organizations, a lot of times they're saying, pay in advance. Get a contract with us, pay in advance. And that sounds really good, but you really need to, and the bottom line here, read the contract, read the contract, read the contract. Be very careful before you sign on the line. So we're just going to go over these very quickly, again, talking about prices may vary and containing the cost. So the things that we've got are, you going to prepay? Is it required? What's the fixed cost? And by fixed cost, what we're talking about, when you get one of these contracts, they will either say, this is the cost of everything here, and this is what it's going to cost, and this is what you're paying. And other ones will say, well, you're paying for this, and you'll get this amount towards it, towards whatever plan that you're choosing. But then, as you can see on the second one, that non-fixed price funeral trust, that there may be additional things that you'll have to pay for it because the prices may have changed. Prices may vary. So again, these first two, a fixed priced funeral trust or a non-fixed price funeral trusts. So again, a lot of times these are working with different companies, and they're usually for profit because this is how some people are making a living, in that they're funeral directors or they're part of funeral homes, and so this is part of what they do.
And they could go out of business.
Indeed, that's why you want to read the contract. What happens? Thank you for bringing that up, because what happens if they do go out of business? Is there another organization that will work with this? Or what we have heard nationally is sometimes you are just, that money is gone. So look into all these things very carefully. On the first one here, where it says fixed costs, yes, but the plan may include administrative costs. The research that I have seen is up to 15% administrative costs out of what you're paying, up to 10% of the interest paid on your account can be utilized by the entity that is providing this funeral trust. So again, be really careful with these things. The first two, again, I'm going with the first two, the interest is taxable. Can you cancel? Yes, but depending on when you made the arrangements, what the contract reads, you will get just a portion of that back. Looking at insurance funded plans, this is something that you contract out differently. It's not usually with a specific home. So again, you can read that. It depends on the policy. Going down to the bottom, read the contract. The last one is one that people talk about a lot, payable on death accounts. So it's a P.O.D. Again, consult a lawyer for this as well. As talking to the bank or the credit union or whatever company that you're going to create this account with. And this one is definitely, it's not a fixed price. This is just you're putting money aside so that after your death, someone else can access that. That's why it's payable on death, and then they can pay for that. So this one, you control a whole lot more. Again, we're spending time on this because we're talking about how prices may vary. And this is one of the biggest ways that we see that happening. The next one, shop around, read the GPL. Now you get to know some of those terminology things. So GPL sounds fancy. It stands for General Price List, required by the Federal Trade Commission. We've already talked about that a little bit today. What the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, has as your legal rights. So you can have that sent to you in the state of Arizona. They're not required to post this online. I mentioned earlier that there is a review of the funeral rule, and one of the biggest things that they are reviewing is whether or not they're going to require GPLs to be put online. Right now, they're not. And I can say that even though that review was a while back, the Federal Trade Commission says we will, put forward our new guidelines and our new rulings, but they haven't yet, to my knowledge. That's something, it takes them a long time. There's a lot of review periods for this. And so it's coming, but that is something that hopefully will happen. One of the things that, and I am mentioning FCA just because I'm here to support you. Grieving is hard. Don't make it harder. And we're here to support you to help ease that for you as much as we can. So one of the things that we have is this, for the state of Arizona, is a section of our website. And I know you've got the papers there. You could look ahead and look at it. But, oh, look, none of you are. You're so nice. When I used to teach, when I gave them the PowerPoint, it was flip, flip, flip. Oh, this is what she's talking about today. And I was like, there's no surprise. So thank you all for following along on our journey here. So basically, we have done that in the state of Arizona for you. Every 2 years, FCA of Arizona does a review of all of the funeral homes in the state of Arizona. And on our website, you can see that entire list. And we also have something new, which I'm really excited to show you, which last year we didn't have. So this is what they mean by that price comparison report. You've already seen this checklist. It's one of my favorite things to share with people. What about this price list? Understand the package deal. It may be that the package deal is a really good deal for you. Again, costs can vary. And a lot of times, what's been happening is that this non-declinable fee, which is sort of like in the middle section there, this non-declinable fee for the funeral home overhead, one of the things that they do is they have been lowering that. I was talking to a former funeral director a few weeks ago, and he said a new way that material is being presented is to have that non-declinable fee, which sometimes can be $2,000 or $3,000. So they're having that lowered, but the price is being placed into other areas. So you're still paying for that. And again, this is a business, and businesses do need to pay for electricity. They need to pay salaries. They need to pay for paving the parking lot. So there are reasons why there are these non-declinable fees. So again, even though you may have a price, check to see what that non-declinable fee is as well. And sometimes a package deal is a good deal if it contains everything that you want. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Well, actually, we're talking about it now. I rearranged our steps. So what is it that you really want? Think about that. What do you want? What do you need? What do you want to focus on? I have added focus on in here because I feel like that's the most important thing. If you come away with anything today, I hope it's that you get a clear understanding from today and in the coming days. How do you want to support your loved ones after you have passed? You want to give them information. And how do you want to get more information so that you can make those decisions for someone else who you know who has died? So let's go with only what you want. Again, we have this price comparison report. It's apples to apples. We're going to show you 3 different things: direct cremations, direct burials, and simple funerals. And what is simple, folks? If I say, my anniversary is coming up, it's over 50 now, I still can't believe it. He's still married to me. And if you ever see this, Roger, you know I care. But what's simple for one person may not be for another. So that's up to you, whatever that means. And this comparison is based on an itemized review of all the things that you've been seeing already. And the examples are here for you to look at later when you want to click on that. Asking about that package price, only what you want. What I have found when I have been involved with this personally is sometimes they'll have ideas, and I had no idea that that was something that people thought about doing. And so they may give you some ideas of things, whether you want to use them or not, or do them personally without paying the funeral home. But sometimes the package deal can be a good deal. The next one is buy only what you need. Once again, I'm showing that checklist, my favorite checklist, buying only what you need. Sometimes a la carte really is the way to go. There are things that you can do for yourself that I think are very cathartic, which is what I'm going to be ending with in a few minutes, is why is it important to do this yourself? Again, when I've first started studying this in 1995, and it actually changed the course of my career in many ways. When I was in grad school, I took a course, Death and Dying and Cross-Cultural Perspective. I'm still involved in near-death experience research. And no, I've never had one, okay? And I don't want one because not everybody comes back, okay? So it's one of those things where people ask me about that. So I just thought I'd preempt that question for later. Buy only what you need. And then the last one, this is the one I want to focus on, buy only what you want to focus on. So what is important to me? What is important to you? Do you want a full funeral? Bless you. Whatever that means for you. What is a full funeral? For some people, it's just, those bare bones things. Some people want something a whole lot more. Do you want to save money? Maybe that's where your focus is. Burial plots, niches, caskets, urns, whatever it is. A lot of times people do not have an actual urn that you buy. They'll use things like a cookie jar. So there's actually a group that provides cookie jars to people. So if you have someone, I'm saying grandmother, but other people bake cookies too. But if you have someone who is a great baker and maybe you want to put their remains into there. Maybe you want alternatives to newspaper obituaries. Social media is something, people can focus on something like that and they can post. Military times, I'll mention again in a moment. The last two, photo memorials and having the service streamed. So last year in the summer, Funeral Consumers National hosted someone who actually does this as his profession, and that is streaming funerals, weddings, other events, but a lot of funerals. And he said something really important that I want to mention to you. He said that, yes, you can live stream, like we're live streaming here, but it's a different experience. And so if you're going to live stream the memorial service, make sure that you also have something for the people who are just watching online in some way. And it may be that you have a separate time for them, that they can talk with each other and have their own thoughts that they can articulate. But it is a different kind of experience when it's online. And talking to people at the funeral home, maybe it's your faith community, maybe it's another organization, see what it is that they do. Sometimes you can have a larger group chat and people can talk to each other so that they also get an experience of being able to grieve and memorialize. He talked about the idea of virtual hugs. This idea of how do you do that when you're online? And again, if someone wants to talk to me more about that, you could also look at his presentation and I can get you a link for that. What about covering the cost? That's why we're here. Costs may vary. So how in the world are you going to pay for this? We've talked about this in a little bit of depth already, but here are some other examples. The bottom, pre-planned, but don't necessarily prepay, except for Medicaid spend down, which is a requirement. But some of these different things that you can do, again, we talk about this in other presentations, but you can see the list here. Maybe this will pique something inside of you where you're thinking, oh, that's not something I thought about before. And I'm going to focus for just a moment on the last one on the right side, which is indigent burial. Funeral Consumers Alliance nationally is going to hold their biennial convention. They actually haven't done this since COVID. So this is our first in-person. We've just done things online. And our speaker, the book here for them, our speaker, who is our keynote, is Pamela Prickett, who has written a book, just came out, called The Unclaimed, Abandonment and Hope in the City of Angels. people whose bodies are unclaimed for a variety of reasons. Her book is very compelling. I actually have already heard her speak. She was at the Tucson Festival of Books, so I got to go hear her there, but she's also going to be our keynote. And this particular conference at the end of June is talking about cost containment. Covering the cost of goodbye is what we're calling it, looking at addressing funeral poverty in the United States. This is a much larger issue and it's growing bigger every year. Two things. One is when you're looking at what has often just been called indigent burial, so there is no money available, no funding available to cover that cost. Sometimes what happens, and this is something that Dr. Prickett talks about, sometimes these bodies are unclaimed and they are unmoored. And by unmoored, think about mooring a boat. The idea is that these people have lost connections with their families, and their families may not even know that they have died. This is more common than one thinks, and in the research that she and Stephen Timmermans did, this is part of what they found in Los Angeles. These people were not all people who were uncared for. A lot of times they were people who, for whatever reason, had become unmoored from their families. And I found out something last night, so it's not in the presentation, but I'm going to say it now. I am so grateful to have read that in 2024, Pima County, our own Pima County in Arizona, was the leader, the forefront in the nation in identifying unclaimed remains. Amazing. It's amazing, and I'm so grateful for that. So again, if you're interested in this topic, talk to me more afterwards about this. Last of these, you might consider joining a memorial society, and there are different kinds. So again, read the fine print. FCA of Arizona is sort of a memorial society. We are really education-based, but this group, and here I'm speaking from the national level, just looking at Arizona, FCA of Arizona does have agreements with some funeral homes in this area to negotiate a lower price. But there are a lot of different ways to look at this, and other groups as well. I think two things that are important is that they're not going to sell that member's information for pre-need or other goods, and that whatever group it is, like FCA, they don't benefit financially from this. So again, whatever group you're looking at, focus on those kinds of things. So prices do vary. We're right on time. We love it when we're on time. So this is just the general piece, and then we're going to look at each one of these separately. So we're looking at direct cremation, direct burial, and full funeral. And the regions that are covered in the state of Arizona's comparison every year are northern Arizona, central, and southern. And we're in southern, so I'm going to focus on that one. So let's go to the first one. And that is looking at direct cremation. Once again, my favorite list. And you can see that what we did was look at direct cremation, and we looked at either GPLs that were online or that were sent to us. And we looked at the same thing, comparing apples to apples for everyone. So in southern Arizona, for exact same services, $700 up to $2,900. Those were the price quotes that we got, 415% variance. So prices vary. They vary quite a bit, folks. Excuse me for a moment. Water time. It just chokes me up. But think about the differences here. When I was teaching at ASU on death and dying, I really should have stopped, but I was always on my way to class, because I lived here, but I drove up there to teach because you want to live in Tucson. Anyway, and there was this billboard, and it's cremations, and it was like $650 or $700. And I always thought that would make a great picture to put in one of these PowerPoints. But they get advertised a lot in Arizona. Other places in the United States do not have cremations quite as low as we have here, but there's a healthy, I use that word healthy, there's quite a bit of competition here. And so yes, the price of cremations can be quite low. here. And direct cremation, here we are talking about there's no viewing. This is just the body after passing is taken. That doesn't mean that you can't do those other things. And I'm smiling here because, again, the support here is how do you continue to memorialize people? I'll get to that in a moment. Let's take a look at the next one, direct burial. Southern Arizona, 1,300 up to 5,000. Again, the same services. Now, it may be that you like a particular place better, or you like particular people better, who run a particular place. And so it's worth it to you to pay more. So there are a lot of different reasons why people may choose. Again, that variance here, 386% for the same services that we checked. The last one here is a full funeral. And I would say this is a full, simple funeral because funerals can get really, really expensive. Southern Arizona, $3,000 up to $8,000 for the same things that we checked for. And again, you can add so many other things when that price varies. You can do things yourself instead. And I've been talking for quite a while. Are there any questions online at this point?
I think you're
Good to go? Okay. I know we said we were going to hold until the end, but I figured I should just check on this one. Now, this is the part where I may need your help, please. And that is what I want to show you is something that was not available last year when I gave this presentation because it was still in the works. This is available to all of you here, all of you online. Anybody can work on this. So help me to get this one ready. This is our interactive map. And I obviously did not create this. I just like it. We actually had a grant. FCA of Arizona had a grant to help put this together. So here we go. All right, now to remember how to use this. Okay, we go down here. This. So this is the interactive map. And what I really like is, oh, good. Oh, it's working now. Okay, let's take a look at this. So you don't really want to calling around. Maybe you don't want to read everything, that's on our website. I'm so sorry. You would have loved it. But let's take a look here. I'm going to go a little bit closer into Tucson. Tucson. Well, let's take a look at this one, Vistoso Memorial. Here you can see the prices. I'm going to go down a little bit further here. I want to make sure I get this up big enough. Oh, here we go. Okay. So here's Vistoso. What can I say? I thought it was working well. Go down. All right. I think you get the idea. So you can see the prices for the burial. I'm going to go one more time. There. Now it's short. There you go. So this is Vistoso. You can see most of what's here. And it's going to give you those same prices that you would have seen online. So let's take a look at another one over here. And that's the Neptune Society. That's the one that I was hoping that I could pull up. And again, you can see the difference in the prices. Their direct cremation is a certain price, and the one at Vistoso was a different price. Interestingly, because what the Neptune Society focuses on is cremation. But again, you can look at this. This is, again, one of my favorite new things to show people that can help support you in your educational journey, looking at all of these differences online about how funerals may vary and funeral options may vary. So let us, help me get back into the other one now. Thank you so much. Different computers. When I will just say this, and thank you for doing this, and that is when I have worked with people in the past, we'll just put this up here, in the state of Arizona. They're not always in Southern Arizona, and this map is going to be so useful. I used to just say, well, you can go to the website and you can look at all of those there, and they are divided by region. But here you can actually just see what's available, and you can let your fingers do the walking, literally, on something like this. And so this can be helpful. Not all of us are going to live here in Southern Arizona. Maybe you have family somewhere else in Arizona, or maybe it is someone is coming in to Arizona to help take care of the funeral. They can also access this. So the next part is options do vary. And I'm just going to bring up a couple of different things here. The first one is recompose. I had said that I had gone and done a site visit there as part of a tour. Think about that. What is your tour for today? My tour for today is looking at a natural organic reductions facility. But I was excited to go. What can I say? I got up early for that. But what is natural organic reduction? Has anybody here ever heard about this? Okay, legal in the state of Arizona. So excited to say that, as well as alkaline hydrolysis, sometimes called aquamation or other names. Both of those legal in the state of Arizona right now, and still working on facilities is my understanding. But places, and there's more than just recompose. This is just one of the places. So what is natural organic reduction? That is, another way to put it is human composting. So this is taking the body and that's why it's called reduction. It is reduced down naturally. They being the people who utilize this type of process, they do hurry it along a little bit. And part of the way they do that is by adding specific mixtures to the body. So the body is laid. That's where you can see the image on the left. The one on the right is me looking up inside. And the one on the left is a proxy body that they just were showing, how it would work. And so the body is laid to rest, goes into this particular facility. That's actually just a pass-through, the one that you can see me looking in the right. And then the body is placed in a cylinder, and different mixtures are put in there, different soil mixtures, depending on the body. So they're actually looking at the weight of the body, fat content, etc. And that's placed in there, and that helps to facilitate the reduction of the body into compost. So that's one option. That's a newer option. The other option is green burial, and green burial means different things to different people. So are you talking about, fully green burial in a full green burial cemetery? There's actually another cemetery in Tucson, or a cemetery in Tucson, that has a section for green burial. What that means is that there is nothing artificial, there's no embalming, and everything needs to be biodegradable, including what is taken on the body, so the clothing. I was really excited to read how one of the 3 VA cemeteries that has a dedicated space for green burial is here in the state of Arizona in Phoenix. And as of last December, 152 spaces in Colorado Springs, 155 in Phoenix, and 222 in Bushnell in Florida. So this is available now at some of the VA cemeteries. And then the last part is add your own options. And this is something that I wanted to focus on a little bit today when I said, what are we going to focus on? To say yes to one thing is to say no to something else. To say no to one thing is to say yes to something else. You may not want to spend money on one thing because you want to spend money on something else. And more important than money, folks, is your time. Time is the one resource you have that you do not ever get back. And I think we know this as we move forward in life. I used to tell my students, time has 2 qualities that nothing else has. Those 2 qualities are you don't know how much time you have left, and you don't know the quality. All you know is that you have 24 hours less today than you did yesterday. And that is not meant to be depressing, but to say, what are you going to focus on? And what do you want to focus on for either planning your own funeral or someone else's? What is personally meaningful to them or to you or to both? Think outside the box. This is where prices really vary because your time is priceless. And what is often remembered at a funeral or a memorial service is not all the fancy stuff, although that can be really nice. But it's also, how did you facilitate being able to speak with other people? What is it that you remembered? I bring up a couple of little things for you. One is, I'll show you that one in a minute. Let's start with the one on the right. You can see there's a ribbon there. So I attended a funeral and memorial service. So it was an actual funeral, which you don't always see here in Arizona. A lot of times it's a memorial. But I attended a funeral a few weeks ago, and it was for the matriarch of the family and the new matriarch of the family, because her mother had died. The new matriarch of that family is, I'm honored to say, my friend, and she was preparing the funeral. And what she did was get a bolt of ribbon, purple ribbon. A bolt of ribbon, how much? $10 maybe? I don't know how much it would cost, depends on where you go. But she cut them into small pieces, put them into the same type of shape that you see here, and put a straight pin in each one, had a basket, and handed it out to everybody who was at the memorial service and who went to the funeral and then to the burial afterwards. So it was her mother's favorite color, and everybody wore a piece of that favorite color as part of their service. Extremely meaningful to everyone, something to remember. But was it expensive? No, but it was meaningful. This is another one, and this is one I'll show here and show to all of you. So this is a crane. This one was actually given to me. Mine did not look this nice, but I mentioned before the passing of our son, and when he died, I made paper cranes, and I handed them out at the memorial services. We had more than one. We had one here, and we had one in Illinois, where we're from. It was very impactful to me, to other people, just to sit there, to have something to do with our hands, to create, to hand out. And this is where I'm going to put my heart on my sleeve here. I have been studying this for a long time. What I have found across cultures is this. People want to do something. I think this is biological as well as just cultural. But think about it. You have been hit like this up against a wall. Someone has died. What happens to you physically, what happens to you biologically is hormones come out in your body. You're secreting hormones, and you need to do something. Have you heard of fight or flight? And then there's always, of course, the rest. For me, it's like I'm not running anymore. I'm 70 years old and I trot. I do not run. I just trot at this point in time. So what are you going to do? You have all of this energy pent up because you have been through something. Even if it was expected, you still have all of this happening in your body, and you need to do something. When I look cross-culturally, what has been poignant to me through the years is how people want to do something. That person has died, but you want to reach. You want to reach and connect with them in some way. And how can you do that? You can create something to give out. You can do something. You can put that ribbon out, which connects everybody to that person and to you. Another thing that I have seen people do a lot is they create memory boards. How many of you have seen those memory boards? Usually it has a bunch of photographs. I will say this, please don't put your originals on there because you don't know what will happen to them. It's something I've talked about when I was working with my students. Always make a photocopy. So this is like a little side note here. Always make a photocopy because you don't know what will happen at some point. Do I speak from experience? But again, they're making something. They're doing something. You want to be able to do something. Think about that idea of a casserole in the United States. How many of you have had someone pass away in your family and they bring you something? I was brought a particular brand of fried chicken in a bucket, and that's all I'm going to say about that brand. But someone brought me a bucket of chicken, which I thought was really good. And I will leave it at that. Did I eat the whole bucket by myself? No, I did not. But the idea is that people will bring you something, or maybe you've been the person who brought something and you want to do something. I think that's why your own options are so important. Lean into that. Allow yourself to feel. And it may not be during the ceremony. Maybe it will be weeks later, and you'll want to do something for them. Again, this is something that I see universally as we want to continue to remember grief. It's one of those important things that I learned. What is grief? Grief is weaving the presence of that person into your ongoing life. You keep them with you in some way. It's a memory. And how do you do that? Part of it is how you honor them, how you weave them in by doing things that are personally meaningful. Last step, we're right on time. Talk it over, write it down. Only 21% of Americans have discussed their funeral wishes with their loved ones. Now, I think I'm, what do they say, preaching to the choir here. I have a feeling that some of you have already started these discussions. I see smiles, I see nods, and I see some people, but mostly I see smiles and nods. So when are you going to do that? And if you've already done that, do you have it written down somewhere? Maybe, maybe not. You know, think about that, writing it down, making sure that this is something that you get your own wishes, your own values placed in writing so that other people can see that. I've heard so many people talk about Thanksgiving as the time that every year they renew their wishes. I've always thought there's an interesting discussion. Pass the turkey, and now do you want to know what I want this year for when I die? Not a turkey yet, you know, just passing that turkey. Some of the sources to get you started, sort of a standard by Caitlin Doughty, Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. And that one, I'm not going to say it's a fun read, but I will say it's an interesting, compelling read. She talks about funeral industry. The next two, conversation skills you need for a successful end-of-life discussion. I think one of the most important things you need is a willingness to love your loved ones and connect with them and support them. And then the last one, 10 must reads about death and end-of-life care, conversation project. So thank you again for inviting me today. For each of you, for your families, for your friends, I wish you a measure of gentleness in all things, including grief. May your time be valued. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dianna. This was great. I love to hear you really shed a lot of light on the process, and that's so important. And I know that it's something that people have a hard time, you know, working on. And so one of the questions that came in was, does FCA, the Funeral Consumers Alliance, do people ever meet to discuss options with anyone one-on-one, or is it just through the website?
They can do this one-on-one.
Okay.
Definitely. We have a phone number that is at the end of the slide set.
Okay.
Actually, there's like a couple of slides that just showed resources, and then the very last one, and that's okay. You don't have to show it. People will
Sure.
be able to see it in the slide set. But they can call, and yes, they can make an appointment just to talk to somebody about these options. Again, we're not legal advice. We are supportive advice, you know, to help people talk through, you know, and think about this, because to me, philosophically is so important, because if you know what you want to focus on, that's when then you can take those next steps. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And I think, you know, it is important. It is important to know what somebody's wishes are as well. I know, you know, I had a situation similar to yours where we learned, you know, you think you're going to go one way, but then you find out that your loved one actually would like something different, and you want to make sure that you're able to follow that. So I think it's important. What happens if you don't have a plan and you haven't made any decisions prior to your death? Maybe you don't have somebody that is able to, you know, assist with you know, a burial or a funeral. What does that look like then?
There's actually two different parts to this question. The first one is, I'm going to make an assumption that you are dying here in the state of Arizona. The state of Arizona has a list of who is the person who is considered the one who takes care of that body. And it starts out with husband or wife, you know, so with spouse, I should say. And then the list continues on, looking biologically and then looking at other people who may be the people to make that decision. So part of what you're talking about is who makes that decision legally.
Mm-hmm.
That may not be the same person that you are interested in having this, you know, in having make those decisions. So even if you haven't put that in writing, the state has done this for you, folks. The state has already made that decision. If there is nothing in writing, this is the law, and this is who will be responsible. And if people choose not to be responsible, then the list continues on.
It just goes down the list.
Right,
Okay.
goes down the list. So that I think is the most important thing. And then the second part, looking at this question, it does have to do with if you have articulated in some way to some people, and whether or not those people get together with the people who are legally responsible. So there are so many times when people may not have said something, or maybe their ideas have changed, and yet they can work amicably with, together to make those decisions.
Yes. And I also appreciate that, you say that there are definitely options that you don't have to choose. For instance, an urn at.
I think you're sort of, what's the word? We were buffering and it looked like it was frozen slightly.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So what I was saying is that often I love that, you shared that you don't need to necessarily shoot when you go to maybe discuss the arrangements. You don't need to choose perhaps an urn that's right there. You could pick something that is personal to your loved one that maybe you want to utilize instead, and all the different options that you also have if you decide that you want to do a burial. As far as a casket is concerned, I think oftentimes you don't think about that, but what's going to bring everybody peace, and what is it that that your loved one would want. So thank you for sharing those other ideas for them to consider. So I'm going to wrap up with our online audience. I want to thank you so much for being here today. You always bring us a wealth of knowledge in a really difficult topic for folks. So I appreciate you being here, Dianna, and I will turn it over to you for any in-person questions. Thanks again.
And thank you for everyone who joined online. I really appreciate your kind attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being here today. If you registered online, we will go ahead and send out the slide deck. There are some books that Dianna had mentioned that she recommended included in there as well, along with the information about the Funeral Consumers Alliance in case you would like that. So if you did not register and you just happen to be watching and you are interested in that information, please give us a call in the office. We'd be happy to send that information to you. The phone number here is 520-324-1960. Same number you would call if you would like to register for a class. I also want to share with you that we do have advanced care planning appointments available in our office. It is free. We have a volunteer that helps with those. So again, you would call the same number here and they would help you to make an appointment for that in the future too. Our next class is going to be on Wednesday, May 7th. We're moving into Women's Health Month, and that is the Conscious Aging Workshop. If you're interested in that class, please give us a call. Again, phone number is 520-324-1960. Thank you so much. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.